Hello again, everyone. I'm Tom Nagorski, managing editor with the Cipher Brief, here today to talk about a big subject, China, its military ambitions, its military capabilities, and specifically a recent report came out just the other day that China is building a vast military command center or complex, we're not quite sure what it is, in and around Beijing. It is said to be 10 times larger than the Pentagon. Which, if you visited the Pentagon, is saying something. We're joined today by Rear Admiral Mike Studeman, a former commander of naval intelligence, member of our group of experts, author of the recent book, Might of the Chain, which is a great book on leadership, ethical and otherwise, doing it the right way. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. And I know we don't know much about it. There was this big report in the Financial Times about this military compound, which some are calling Beijing's military city. Among other details that were reported, it's expected to house deep bunkers that could withstand American bunker buster bombs, even a nuclear strike. Just wondering, with your level of expertise, you read something like that. How should we receive it? How did you receive the news of this new facility?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I think it's part of a pattern of behavior with regard to the Chinese military buildup and their intent to ensure that they're ready for a major power war. There are so many different indicators that the Chinese are being told to get ready in the 2020s, by 2027, for a variety of contingencies that will have nuclear elements associated with them if the Chinese commit aggression. And so the Chinese are very serious about preparing for conventional and nuclear outcomes in any potential war. They'd love to get their way without fighting. They'd love to intimidate and show that there's no possibility of holding the Chinese leaders at risk in a future war. And they're building the capabilities to ensure that that would be the case. Now, they had a bunker in Western Hills for many, many years. I suspect that they reviewed their nuclear posture and looked at the defensive side and decided they needed to have more assured protection for a variety of different kinds of weapons, all the way up to the high-end nuclear types. And so I think they embarked on this particular element, but all is part of the whole. This is a small element of a larger growth in capabilities designed to bring the Chinese up to be on par in terms of a nuclear capability with the United States and any other comers.
So you've answered part, if not all, of my next question, but so I'll rephrase it a little bit. I mean, is this, all the things you mentioned, part of preparation for a specific contingency, i.e. Taiwan, South China Sea? Is it part of Xi Jinping's 2049, I think is the date, great plan for the rejuvenation of China? Is it all of that?
Yeah, I think we need to see it in multiple lights, and I think they're mutually reinforcing. First of all, the Chinese understand that they need to grow their comprehensive national power. That's an aggregate of every kind of power across sharp, hard, soft power. And this is one important area for them to develop their capabilities and essentially harden their society, their leadership, their critical infrastructure to be able to withstand a worst case scenario. And so part of it is, well, I need these capabilities because it gives me a dominant position in the world. I intend to come back into center stage. I intend to build up my comprehensive strategic power and to be able to have it so that it at least meets, if not exceeds, the United States and the West and any others. There's that sort of conceptual element of where they see themselves by their rejuvenation date of 2049 or earlier, if they can. And then there's the very specific case that if there's any likely war on the horizon, it's going to be the case regarding their core sovereignty issue and Xi Jinping's intent to assimilate Taiwan. He's been very clear that this is an essential part of the rejuvenation. He knows that it's not going to go easy into that dark night. And so they intend to look at every potential outcome in the process of assimilating that stretch of territory. And they know that the likelihood of U.S. intervention is high. And so they intend to be prepared for any contingency. And that includes all the way up to sort of this nuclear escalation ladder. And they do not want to be seen as vulnerable at any part of that ladder, including the possibility that there may be strikes against Beijing in a way that was designed to decapitate the CCP.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk for a moment about the nuclear escalation ladder. I'm not sure, well, I'll speak for myself, that everyone understands the need in this day and age to do what the Chinese are doing when it comes to the nuclear arsenal. They, by all accounts, are marching up, not the ladder necessarily of escalation, but the ladder of buildup. Most recent figure we've seen is up to 600 operational warheads. The U.S. assesses they'll have 1,000 by 2030. Given what we understand about nuclear deterrence generally, what is the reasoning and the need to get to that level? Is it simply, as you were saying before, to match American capabilities?
The STRATCOM commander, Admiral Richard, in years past, was very clear when he said that in all respects, the Chinese capabilities are a breakout capability in terms of nuclear development, weapons, command and control, all the way through the protection side of it. Launch on warning, the new triad where they have now bombers with nuclear tipped missiles. In addition to submarines, they continue to build more of those. You'll see a new SSBN with a more advanced missile called the JL-3. And then these advanced ICBM types, some of them are silo based, some of them are road mobile. And then these huge silo fields that they're building out in the West, and detection capabilities, the ability to do orbital bombardments, hypersonic capabilities. I mean, the penetration aids, the list goes on. The Chinese intend to essentially have an ability to walk up the nuclear ladder and hold their own, if not be dominant at every rung along that nuclear ladder. Look, they were threatened with nuclear weapons, and it's the way that the crises of the 1950s over the offshore islands were resolved. The Chinese remember their history when Mao Zedong was shelling Kinmen and Matsu, 54, 55, and then in 58 crisis, our presidents threatened nuclear weapons, and so that resolved the issue. They do not want to see Taiwan resolved because we have any kind of nuclear edge with which to compensate for conventional force issues or to be able to use it in a way where the Chinese can't respond. That requires them to develop the nuclear force on pace and in parallel with the advancement of the conventional forces in every warfare area. And so the Chinese have learned from their past. They know that the United States would be tempted to potentially use nuclear supremacy as a way to resolve the situation, and they're not going to let that happen. And so that's the reason you find them investing in these capabilities. They're locking out nuclear as an option for the United States. And essentially, all you have to do is reach sufficiency to achieve a mutually assured destruction capability. You just have to have enough capability to hold the United States at risk and to do counter value in a way that essentially would be existential on our side. And they're approaching that already. They intend to have more warheads. They intend to have a family of systems that include theater options, not just thermonuclear, think, the largest possible bombs, but think about smaller ones tailored for, selective use with less overall damage, but designed for devastating effects inside the theater. Think using against Guam or, at sea against carrier strike groups. Those are the kinds of that's kind of thinking that China is walking through. because if you have more options than your opponent, then you'll prevail. And so in the peacetime, they hope that we'll take a look at this and go, there's no way that we could prevail in a conflict with China. We shouldn't even embark down that path. So there's a whole influence game in peacetime. And then there's the real thing. If you end up in it because of miscalculation, and because of decisions that are made, that they intend to prevail in time of war as well. And that's the reason why they're spending so much in each of these capability areas across the military.
Yeah. Well, it does harken back when you talk about mutually assured destruction. It sounds a lot like the initial Cold War. I do want to ask you, Mike, about another element which has less to do with technical capability and more to do with personnel. As you know, the Pentagon puts out an annual, I think it's congressionally mandated report on China's military power. And I was interested to see in there, ran through a lot of the things we've been talking about, but it also referenced issues with commanders and other personnel in China. And what the PLA, the People's Liberation Army itself, acknowledges are, I think it calls it the 5 incapables. And I'll just read from this report. 5 incapables. Some PLA commanders are incapable of judging situations, understanding higher authorities' intentions, making operational decisions, deploying forces, or managing unexpected situations. So give us your assessment of that. It's interesting because it seems to be just headed in the opposite direction from all the advances China's making on the technical front.
Yeah, I do think that when it comes to the PLA inspiring sort of confidence of civilian leaders, the chairman, the Central Military Commission, and the Politburo writ large, that there's enough room for them to be concerned whether or not they're truly ready, for a high intensity warfare environment. They judge themselves harshly and constructively critical. And they allow their forces lots of opportunities to exercise. And when they don't necessarily deal well with weather or new contingencies, that report goes in and they look at ways to become better in the future. Look, they have a dilemma, right? Because if you're in a society where freedom isn't enjoyed, but you need to kowtow up your hierarchy, there's a great deal of fear spore in the air, and fear as a motivator only gets you so far. The fear of that system, right? Making a misstep, doing something that, your bosses didn't want to see happen. You can't always predict what those are, but it creates a hesitation or an intimidation effect down the chain for people to take, independent action in a way that we do within the U.S. military and other Western militaries. So that's a very real deficiency. I'm not sure they're ever going to fix that, but they are trying to create leaders who, in fact, do have that blend of political loyalty, but that have more confidence in employing military forces. And so this is something that I think they're going to have to struggle with for quite some time. They're also affected by these corruption sweeps that are occurring, and so there's more fear there about what that means. And corruption has been part of their promotion system for many years. They've tried to clean up some parts of it, but it still exists, and so it calls into question whether or not you really have the most competent, capable officer there, at the senior colonel level or at the general or admiral level. So there are deficiencies there, but I would just warn people who want to use those as an excuse to say that the PLA can't fight, and they haven't fought since 1979, that the sheer material strength of what they produce, the amount of live fires that they do of every missile system, the amount of training and exercise time that they give them, the amount of training they get in their wartime op areas across the China Seas all the way through and around Taiwan and then east of Taiwan. Don't underestimate a force of this size with this many advanced capabilities across every warfare area. we would underestimate them at our peril. I think we're treating them seriously here, but I wouldn't use those old deficiencies as a way to say that the PLA can't engage and win based on proximity and sheer weight of their forces.
Recognizing excellence in national security, the Cipher Brief Honors Dinner celebrates those who've made a real difference in protecting our nation. It's an unforgettable evening with top leaders in the field. Join us in honoring these remarkable contributions. Reserve your seat now at cipherbriefhonors.com.
So last question, Mike Studeman, you've painted a pretty stark picture of the road ahead, and this is probably a question for an entire other session. So I'm not sure there's a short answer, but what should the United States be doing about any of this?
Well, yeah, Tom, it's a great question. I think we're doing a lot. I think we've lost a lot of time. We were probably rightly committed with the global war on terror to make sure we eliminated threats that existed to our interest in a lot of different places, rather to fight afar than to let those kind of threats come near. At the same time, we were doing some investments in modernizing our military, just not in enough places and fast enough. And so now in the 2020s, we find we're behind in many areas. And so whether it's conventional forces, whether it's C5ISR or counter C5ISR capabilities, long-range fires, directed energy, lasers, space, cyber, nuclear, the list goes on. These are very expensive capability areas to be in a major competition, not just with one peer, but essentially on the nuclear front, two-peer challenge with Russia and China that are colluding together. So this is a major test here of American industrial might. Can we recover and get more capability there in our manufacturing side for defense? Can we bring those concepts together that we've been developing that have promise? And can we take a look at the world around us and see that, in fact, we are back to essentially the 20th century issues where nuclear elements come into play with regard to any kind of contingency planning that we do.
We're going to have to leave it there. Mike Studeman, Cipher Brief expert, former commander of the Office of Naval Intelligence. Sobering stuff. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it.